Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rebecca, otherwise known as Hip Knit Hooray Online, and today I wanted to share my winter knitting plans. So I am still working away on my fall knitting plans. I just cast one on recently, so I'm definitely still going to be working away on those, but I am looking forward to some heavier weight, chunkier, fluffier pieces that I could make to keep myself warm this winter season. It's definitely getting very cold here in Toronto, so I did want to start thinking about winter knitting plans, and winter is fast approaching. It's going to be the official start of the winter season next week. So like all of my other previous seasonal planning videos, I'm going to be drawing primarily from stash yarn, so I'm going to be sharing the yarn here, and then I have a few options for the project. So I'm either deciding myself between different designs, or I just like to share multiple designs of the same type of project in case people are watching this video and want some general inspiration and maybe have slightly different taste to me and just, want some more options and variation. So I'm going to be sharing the yarn, talking about the project, and we'll go from there. So maybe we can just get started with the first one. And this is the yarn here that I had in mind. They're both Knit Picks yarns. This one is Palette, and then this one is Aloft, both in the shade Tarragon. So I actually bought this yarn and I thought it was going to be like a light dusty green, kind of like knitting for olive dusty artichoke. So I was quite surprised when I opened the box and it looked like this, but I've come to really enjoy this color, and I'm really excited to knit it in, I don't know if I mentioned it yet, the type of project, but I'm thinking of knitting a high split hem sweater. I think it's going to look really striking in this green. And so I'm thinking of knitting the Yun Sweater Light by November Knits. This is November Knits' latest pattern, I want to say. It was released, I think, in the beginning of November. This is a lace and fingering weight project knit on 4mm needles, and the sample is knit with Filcolana Arwetta and Senis Garn Tin Silk Mohair for reference. And it's a top-down raglan construction sweater with this really high 2x2 rib split hem. And it has a pretty wide 6-stitch raglan, which I think is very signature to this design, but I don't really like how it looks. So the 6 stitches are 2 purl stitches, 2 knit stitches, and then 2 purl stitches. And that's kind of why I never knit the original Yun sweater, which is a thicker gauge. I think it's Sire, Jensen, and Silk Mohair on maybe 5mm needles, but it's a thicker gauge. I never really knit that design because I didn't really like how the thick raglan lines looked on that heavier gauge. I tried to knit the sweater number 9 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, which has the same 6-stitch wider raglan stitch, and I just really didn't like the look of it. I couldn't get the purl stitch beside the knit stitch to look very even, so it always just looked really messy and not very neat. So I just never wanted to knit the Yun sweater, but I do love the look of the long split hem. I just think it's so striking. So I'm thinking of modifying the raglan stitch and working a thicker raglan stitch, but just omitting the purl stitches. So either a 3-stitch or a 4-stitch raglan just worked in knit stitch. And I'm really excited for this lighter gauge version. I think the drape is going to look really great, and I'm really excited to try this one. I already bought the pattern during November Knit's birthday sale, so I have that ready, but I also started looking at the Hazel sweater by Petite Knit. So this one is DK and lace weight on 4mm needles, and it's knit top down, drop shoulder, and it has this all over 2x2 rib texture stitch. It does feature the high split hem, but the whole sweater is worked in that 2x2 rib. So the Hazel sweater has some really nice design features to get some really nice shaping on the sweater. For example, the back is shaped, the slope of the back is shaped with increases. You also work short rows along the sleeve to get kind of a mini sleeve cap here. And I just think that all of that creates a really nice refined shoulder detail on the sweater. And I do really like the look of the all over 2x2 rib hem. I do think that this is definitely one of those projects where you definitely have to trust the process, because the 2x2 ribbing is going to look really funny and wonky before you block it, but it just looks really elegant once it's done. There are two different versions, I guess, in the pattern. So there's the original sample design, which is the pretty fitted, longer silhouette with the high split hem. But the pattern also has instructions to knit a shorter version without the slits. And I did have that high split hem sweater idea in mind, but I do really like both options. I am a little bit undecided which one that I like more. I do like the look of the more fitted, longer version, but I think the version without the slit looks really nice if you were to knit maybe a size up so it's more oversized and you were to crop it. I think that would look really nice. So still undecided, but I do think that this Hazel sweater is very elegant and also would look really nice in this green color. So that's the first knitting plan that I have. The next one is I really want to knit a red sweater. That is kind of a gap that I have in my wardrobe, and something that I mentioned in my second ever YouTube video. I did want to knit a red sweater, and I think this is the same project that I have in mind. So kind of like my Couture wrap cardigan, because it's followed me for so long and I really want to continue. I still want to continue making it. I think that it's a sign that I should just cast it on. So I am committing myself to casting this on soon, because I also have a bit of a deadline. So I really want a red sweater because I want to wear a knit sweater for the holidays, but also this red works really well for Chinese New Year. And I definitely missed the boat to wear this red sweater for this holiday season, but I am thinking that maybe I could make a red sweater before Chinese New Year in 2025. Unfortunately for me, Chinese New Year is earlier this year. Again, it's in January. I think it's January 29th. So I'm going to try my best to finish this sweater before then, but I'm not really sure. I do want to commit myself to it though, because it's been a full year and I'm still committed to this sweater and this design. So I really just have to cast it on. So the sweater that I'm thinking of making is the Clematis sweater by Emma's Knits. And the Clematis sweater is DK and lace weight on 4.5mm needles. And the original white sample is knit with BC Garn Simila and Kremka Soul Wool. So the yarn that I'm thinking of using is Loops and Threads Cozy Wool Merino in the shade red, and then Drops Kid Silk in the color 14, but I also think in the shade red, and holding them together. I really love Emma's patterns. I've knit one of them before, and I just think that they're extremely well written. They're concise but super clear, and I think a lot of Emma's designs are very classic and timeless, but there's always like a fun twist on them. So for example, this Clematis sweater, it's really popular, so I'm sure you've seen it before, but it has that diagonal button band across the front, and I just think it's gonna look really nice in this bright pop of color. So the Clematis sweater is knit top down. It's a drop shoulder. And you shape that diagonal front with increases and decreases, and all I've really heard is great things about this pattern, that it's an ingenious construction, it's super intuitive, so I'm really excited to try it for myself, and I really do like the look of that front diagonal button band. I'm thinking of either doing red buttons to match this, or potentially some tortoiseshell buttons, or maybe some gold statement buttons. I haven't decided yet, but we're going with this red color for that design. And I don't really have any other options for this Chinese New Year festive sweater. I'm really committed to the Clematis sweater. So I will be casting this on soon, and we're gonna try to finish it before January 29th of next year. So the next project idea that I have in mind is a relaxed but fitted slipover at the same time. So maybe I can just explain. I've knit one slipover before, the Highland slipover. I'm wearing it today, and it's patterned by Ozetta. And I really like this slipover. It's super comfortable and it's oversized. It keeps me really warm. It's a drop shoulder, so it falls around here on my arm, and I really like it as a nice layering piece where I need something to keep me warm, but I maybe don't want to have such bulky sleeves. Like I have this one moto jacket that I like to wear, but if I wear any sort of thicker knit sweater, I can barely move my arms in that jacket. So I do like having a slipover for that reason. But I am interested in knitting one this season that has a more fitted shoulder but still has a relaxed body. I just find it's more comfortable and it's a nice layering piece in that way. So I have a few in mind that have a more fitted shoulder, but the sides are open, so it still creates a nice relaxed oversized fit. So the yarn, before I forget, the yarn that I wanted to knit this slipover with is Briggs & Little Regal. It's 100% pure wool, and it's 2-ply in the shade dark gray. And the first idea that I had in mind is the Lulu Slipover Chunky by Petite Knit. So this is knit with Aran weight on 5mm needles. There is the original Lulu Slipover, which is a lighter gauge. I want to say it's like a DK and mohair held together, but I'm going with the chunkier slipover because this is Aran weight. I'm not planning to hold a mohair with this one. And I don't think that the Lulu Slipover Chunky is knit with mohair either. Yeah, the brown sample is knit with Helholtz Ulspinderi. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. But I really like the look of this slipover. It's knit top down, it has a mock neck, and it has these really deep armholes and a button closure on the side. So the way that you knit this slipover, you cast on the back, and then there's shaping along the back to get that gentle slope, and that's worked with increases, and then you work the body flat and you're increasing gently for that really long armhole. And then I imagine that you would work the front panel in the same way, but just add the neckline shaping here. And then once you finish the front and then the back, you pick up stitches to work this 1x1 rib hem along the shoulder seam, and then you also pick up stitches and work a double knit button placket along the sides of both sides of the slipover. And I just really like the look of this Lulu slipover. I think that the 2 buttons along the side are a really nice touch. It looks very clean and very professional in the double knit as well. And I really like the look of this one. But I have the second idea, which is totally different. It's all over cable, and I mentioned this before, I think in my winter knitting plans of 2024, so this is another pattern that continues to follow me, and I really want to knit it, but I'm a bit intimidated by it, and it's the Euro Slipover by Eggio Knit. So I bought this pattern last year, and I attempted to gauge swatch, and then after that I just gave up on it. I thought the gauge swatch was fine, but I think I was just working on a lot of other projects at the time, and I knew that this project would take a bit of mental energy, and like I'd really have to commit to it, because I don't think that I could cast this aside and then try to pick it up again, just with the construction. I've never done sideways construction. It has a lot of cables in the design, which is really gorgeous, but I think it definitely requires some mental energy and commitment. So I do think that the Lulu Slipover is an easier version of the Euro Slipover in that they both have the 2 buttons for the side plackets here, but the Lulu Slipover is knit in stockinette, so a little bit more relaxing and easier to knit than the Euro Slipover. But I do think that the Euro Slipover has the really gorgeous statement cables, and I do think that this yarn is perfect for the Euro Slipover, so I'm still thinking of making it. The Euro Slipover is knit with Aran weight on 5mm needles, and the suggested yarn is Helholtz Ulspinderi Hvarksgarn, which is a 2-ply yarn and has a very similar meterage as the Briggs & Little Regal. So I think that this yarn is going to have a very similar look as the Helholtz Ulspinderi. And like I mentioned, the slipover is knit horizontally from side to side. It's knit flat, it's never joined in the round, kind of like the Lulu slipover, except for the neckband. And then there's the 2-button placket on the side, but instead of double knit, it's 1x1 rib for the Euro slipover. So these 2 slipovers have a similar silhouette, but achieved in a very different way. So I'm kind of debating between the 2, but I'm thinking of using this yarn here. And then the next two projects that I have in mind are Colourwork Sweaters. So this one is a plan, but it's a languishing whip that I cast to the side because I was still working on this in May of this year, and I was not going to wear a Colourwork sweater in the summertime, so I just put it aside. And then I'm thinking of picking it up soon. And this is the Wave Sweater by Spectacle Strick. The Wave Sweater features this all over, pretty striking wave motif, and it's knit on, it's knit with Aran weight on 4.5 millimeter needles. And I've mentioned this in a few of my podcast episodes before this sweater. I don't think it's the best written pattern. I appreciate Me as a designer. I think her designs are absolutely stunning. They're super unique, but I'm scared to ever knit another Colourwork sweater from Spectacle Streak just because of the Wave Sweater. I just think that there were a lot of details in this pattern that are necessary but were omitted from the pattern. Like, I have all of this in my Ravelry notes, but the wave motif here, it's not continuous, I guess. It restarts at every section of the raglan. So that was really hard to understand because it was not specified in the pattern that you're supposed to restart the motif. And it just doesn't really explain that you're supposed to expand on the motif as you're increasing. So I had a lot of trouble starting this pattern. I've had several people message me on Instagram also asking for help on this pattern, so I know it's probably not just me. So I wouldn't really recommend the pattern, but it is doable. And the part that I stopped at for this sweater was I am ready to start working the ribbing for the body, and then I have the sleeves left. So this is a winter plan, a continuation from last winter, and I'm really excited to have this in my wardrobe because I do think that the Aran weight color work, it's almost like a double layered fabric with your floats, so it's going to be a super warm piece. It's my first ever Colourwork sweater, so I'm really excited to have it done, but it was a very challenging pattern. I'm ready though to pick it up again. So this is my first Colourwork winter knitting plan. The next Colourwork sweater that I have in mind is the Aureliano, which is in Claudia Quintanilla's latest book, Memory Lane. And I have the book here. It's by Lane Publishing, or is published by Lane, written by Claudia. And then the book and the yarn for this pattern was gifted by You Knit, but I do have a change in the yarn that I'm thinking of using, so I will explain. So the Aureliano is very different from the Wave Sweater. The Wave Sweater is Aran weight. It's knit on 4.5 millimeter needles. And the Aureliano is 2 strands of mohair knit on 3.25 millimeter needles. So very different knitting with mohair and also on the smaller needle size. But I'm up for the challenge. It's going to be my second ever Colourwork sweater. And then this is the yarn that I picked out at You Knit. So the Aureliano is knit top down. It has a round yoke construction, and it features this all over colorwork design. And it alternates between, I guess, this geometric square motif, and then there's these really cute, delicate looking bows. And so this is the color palette that I picked. I was thinking this would be my main color, and then these two, I guess I should flip it around, I would use for that geometric square design, and then this rust would be for the bows. So I originally picked that, but then I kind of want to soften it up a little bit. So I decided to omit this light beige shade. I do really like it, but I'm thinking I have this yarn in my stash, which is Sanisgarn Tin Silk Mohair in the shade Light Acorn. And I think I prefer the look of it being a little bit more muted and softened up a little bit. So I do need to go and get another ball of this mohair. I'm hoping that the dye lots are kind of similar, so I have to go pick that up. But I am liking this similar but more muted color palette, and I'm thinking of casting this project on Christmas Day. I've never done that before where I have a Christmas cast on. I know that some people do that as a tradition. I have a few days off of work now, and so I'm thinking that this holiday break is going to be more relaxed than years past. So yeah, I'm thinking of casting this one on soon, and I'm liking the combination. And then the last category of winter knitting plans that I have is to knit a pretty fat, chunky brimmed hat. So I realized that I do really like the look of a really thick brim and a shorter body silhouette of a hat. I don't really like when there's a lot of excess fabric on the top of my hat. I knit the Sharpay beanie, which is a pattern by Crea Dia Studio. And Namita designed this beanie for Lane Publishing's 52 Weeks of Accessories book. And I was part of the test knit, so I don't have the book, but I have this one individual pattern as part of the test knit. And I wear my Sharpay beanie almost every single day ever since it's gotten colder here in Toronto. So I knew that I wanted to knit another pretty chunky brimmed hat, but something a little bit different because I've already knit that one twice, and I just want to try a different technique. So I have two in mind, and the yarn that I'm thinking of using is Knit Picks Palette and Aloft again. I really like Knit Picks Palette and Aloft. I think Aloft is a super soft mohair, and Palette is a very affordable fingering weight 100% wool. So this yarn is a pretty vibrant, bright electric blue, and the first idea that I had in mind is the Fat Fur Hat by Spectacle Streak. So this hat is knit with bulky weight yarn on 6mm needles, and the sample uses Permin Bella, which is 150 meters per every 50 grams. So it doesn't look like it would be bulky weight, but I think that the mohair adds a lot of volume. So I'm thinking of using one strand of fingering and one strand of mohair, or maybe even two strands of mohair, depending on if I need that extra strand to achieve gauge. And the hat is knit in the round with decreases on both ends. So I imagine that maybe you would cast on with some sort of provisional cast on, and then you would work one end of the hat, work the decreases, and then with that provisional cast on you would be able to pick up stitches. I don't have the pattern yet, and I haven't bought it yet because I know Me of Spectacle Streak runs a lot of pattern sales, so I'm kind of waiting for that if there's something where I could get the hat and also maybe another pattern. But I'm also still debating between the second option that I'm going to mention, so I haven't got it yet, but that's how I think that maybe it's constructed. Maybe if you've knit this hat before, you could let me know down below. Either way, I think it's a pretty simple construction. However it's constructed, it's just stockinette. And it's knit on a pretty chunky gauge, so I think it'll be pretty simple and pretty fast to knit up. And then once you finish the whole construction of the hat, you then fold the hat in on itself, so the brim of the hat is actually 4 layers of fabric, so it's going to be super warm, it's super chunky, and then you take a mohair brush and then you brush out the fiber so it gets even more fluffy. I don't know if I'm going to do that. I don't have a mohair brush, and I don't know if I really want to brush it out, but we'll see. Like, I don't know if I want to brush this wool out. I don't know how that's gonna look because I'm not gonna use the suggested yarn. But I think regardless, with the 4 layers of fabric, it's gonna be a really nice chunky brim. So that's the first option. And the next one is slightly different, but I would be able to use the same yarn combination, and it's the Mejorna by Katarina Lindhagen. So it's knit with sport weight and lace on 3.5mm needles. And I actually originally wanted to knit the Olivia hat, which is a pattern by Knitworkitect. That's been on my to knit list for a really long time. But when I went on the Ravelry project page a few days ago, I noticed that the pattern has been discontinued, and I don't know if it's permanently discontinued or if it's just temporarily unavailable. So I did message the designer, but she hasn't gotten back to me yet, so I needed to go digging on Ravelry for an alternative because I do really like the look of this hat. I really want to get into brioche knitting, so I do like the brioche, but I like how the brim of the hat is stockinette, and I thought it looked pretty simple until I saw a photo of the whole hat, I guess, deconstructed, and the bottom of the hat on the inside of the brim is very interesting. There's a section of reverse stockinette and then also a section of 2x2 rib, and I don't know if that is for construction integrity purposes, if it adds more structure to the bottom of the brim. I don't really know, but I'm very intrigued. I don't know, but I like the look of this hat. The decreases of the top of the hat are pretty even decreases, and I think it'd be a nice way for me to get a little bit better at brioche before I attempt a bigger brioche project. And the Mizorna is knit as a two-tone version, so the brim of the hat is different from the body of the hat. I think I would just knit mine in one color, this blue here, but yeah, this is the alternative that I found to the Olivia hat, unless the Olivia hat is going to be available sometime in the future. So thinking of knitting either the fat fur hat or the Mizorna, kind of a different look, I would say, but similar in that they have the very chunky brim, and then the multiple layers for the brim also keep you super warm when it's, -20 outside in the dead of winter. So I'm really excited to have another hat to give my Sharpay beanie a little bit of a break. So that was everything for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much if you reached this point in the video. I'd love to know down below what you are planning on working on this winter season. I have a pretty long list of patterns that I just shared today, but always looking for more inspiration. I love reading down in the comments what you're working on, as always. And I think in a weird way, if I knew that people were also working on any of these patterns, it would make me more personally invested and accountable to myself to work on them. So yeah, I'd love to know what you're working on down below. And if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps the channel out. And if you subscribe, then you can stick around and see me hopefully fulfill most or some of these knitting plans in future podcast episodes. So again, thank you so much for watching, and happy knitting.